And you're live.
Hi, good evening. This is Stephanie with On Campus College Planning. We are really lucky tonight to have a few student athletes with us. Tonight we are going to talk about the highs and lows and the do's and don'ts of becoming a college athlete and really address some of the questions that you may have about becoming a prospective student athlete. And we are going to talk about successfully navigating the college athletic recruiting process. And we have several student athletes, some that are currently still in high school, and we have a few that are either have 1 year under their belt or maybe have all 4 years under their belt. Tonight, we're going to talk first with Jessica Coyne. Jessica completed her college experience at UW Eau Claire. And Jessica, thanks for coming on tonight. She has a few minutes with us. She also has a job and is employed and has another call to get on tonight. So we'll go ahead and speak with Jessica first. Jessica, can you share with us a little bit about you're a Verona grad and just a little bit about your recruiting experience? You were a volleyball athlete, a standout volleyball athlete at Verona, and just share with us about your recruiting experience and your journey.
Yeah, so I graduated from Verona in 2015 and played in the volleyball program all 4 years. And the recruiting process was honestly pretty hard for me. It was hard to kind of feel like I was enjoying my senior year of high school, but also touring a bunch of colleges and talking to all the coaches and just kind of knowing where to start. I was oldest in my family. My parents hadn't gone through it before, and it kind of felt like I was navigating it on my own. So it was definitely something that it felt like a chore when I was doing it. But if I had to have a piece of advice, I would just say it's worth it. Go on the visits, get to know your coaches. I had a really good high school coach at Verona, and she told me when I was going on visits, try to picture yourself as a student and not just an athlete, because when you get to school, you don't know what's going to happen. You could get injured. You could, decide not to be an athlete anymore. And you want to enjoy the school, not just the sport. So I would say, look for it all, look for the full package. Obviously get to know the coaches and the girls that you're going to be playing with and your teammates, but also go into the classrooms, figure out what it's going to look like to be a student, because that's definitely going to be a big part of your college experience too.
So Jessica, you were fortunate to play at a very high level Division III school, probably one of the top volleyball schools, in the state of Wisconsin and, obviously in the country too. And you were also able to really compete and play for an NCAA championship as well while you were there. Can you talk about some of the advantages that maybe you saw from competing at the Division III level? Maybe some of the things that people aren't even aware of when they're, looking at the different levels. We always talk about here at On Campus College Planning that there'll be a level for you and that all of them are, great. And you just have to know what works for you. And, what were those determining factors for you that went into playing Division III volleyball? And then what are some of the advantages that you see?
Yeah, so I looked at kind of all the divisions, and I again, didn't know what to expect or what to look for when I was going on my visits. But when I decided to go Division III, it's because I found out that you can get just as much competitive play as you can at the other divisions, and you can also spend your time doing other things. So I was involved in a bunch of clubs. I studied abroad for a semester. I had internships every summer. I really had the flexibility to focus on my future career and other interests that I had outside of my sport, but that did not take away from my sport experience at all. We traveled internationally to play. We've been to Paris, Belgium, Amsterdam to play volleyball. We went across the country. We played in LA and Pittsburgh, and we traveled to play some of the top teams. So I think it's easy to think that the lower division you go, the less competitive that is, but that is not the case at all. It is hard work. You have to put in a lot of hours and work harder than you ever had before. So I would say when you're kind of deciding what level to go to, don't think that any of the levels are going to be easy. They're all going to be really competitive, and you're going to definitely grow as an athlete and learn a lot no matter what you're doing.
Jessica, do you feel like there were some advantages to being a student athlete while you were at Eau Claire? I mean, how did that help you with your studies, or even can you speak to how did that help you then maybe get a job and go on and have a career?
Yeah, so a lot of people are worried about kind of time management when they're a student athlete, just because you have a few hours every day that no other student has to worry about. You're going to have hours of working out and practice that other students don't have to kind of calculate into their days. But I wouldn't I wouldn't be afraid of that. There's resources for sure that are out there during your college time. So we had study tables that we had every single week where you would get together as a team and do your homework together. Your professors are going to be so understanding. You just tell them your situation. They love sports and they want you to succeed. So there's definitely going to be people who are rooting for you and they want to see you do well. So don't think that playing a sport is a disadvantage. If anything, I had better grades during season because I was just that more committed and had that many more people in my corner on the athletic side. That the academic side I thought was more successful because of it.
That's awesome, Jessica. Jessica, are there any other things that you want to share tonight? I know that you're going to moving on, you have something else going on tonight. Any other stories or anything like that you'd like to share with our student athletes that you find to be helpful during your experience?
Yeah, so I would say a big thing for me that I learned coming out is now that I'm going into my second year in my career. So I graduated a year ago, and it truly gives you an advantage when you graduate college to have that student athlete experience. I mean, you learn so much in leadership and teamwork. And I know everyone says that, but like I can relate so many instances in my working experiences to what I learned as a student athlete. And it's really invaluable. So I would say focus on your team culture and getting to know the people who you're playing with and learning kind of those soft skills because they will really take you so far once you graduate. It's easy to focus on, especially your first few years, focus on playing time and kind of the politics that come with the sport. But I did not play all my 4 years. It took me a lot of hard work to get a starting spot and to get on the court at all. So, and I enjoyed the seasons that I didn't play just as much as the seasons I did play. So I would say, especially when you're kind of going through your recruiting and you're asking questions, coaches are going to be looking for those players who are committed no matter what is going on the court. They want students and athletes who are going to be committed no matter what the scenario is. You can't really control what it's going to look like for your playing time and if you have injuries, and there's so many things out of your control. So I would say focus on building relationships, working hard, putting in those extra hours in the summer, and you're going to go farther than you ever think. So yeah.
Oh, that's Jessica, that's fantastic. And I just love to hear from student athletes when they have these just wonderful experiences at the colleges that they chose. One last thing before I'm going to let you sign off here, Jessica, can I just ask you, so the coach that recruited you, did you have the same coach throughout the entire time that you were playing there, or did you have multiple coaches while you were playing?
Yeah, so I had the same head coach the entire time, but I had assistant coaches that came in and out throughout the 4 years. But I would say that's something that you should definitely be looking for in the recruiting process is your connection with that head coach. I obviously talked to a lot of coaches on email and phone calls and through visits. And this specific head coach that I had at Eau Claire, she kind of had the same values as me. Like I talked to her about wanting to study abroad and wanting to do internships. And she kind of was a really big supporter in all of that. And I came to her throughout my college career, not just for volleyball things that were going on in my life, but personal things, academic things. She was really someone that I trusted and was able to kind of shape my whole 4 years there. So that's definitely something that's important, is to kind of build a relationship with your coach and picture yourself being able to kind of look up to them and talk to them and ask them for advice throughout your 4 years.
Jessica, thank you so much for coming on and just sharing your story with us this evening. You know, I was able to follow you your 4 years and obviously follow you in high school as well. And it's just, like I said earlier, great to see that the journey that you've been on, and now to see you in the, you graduate and get your degree and be off doing what you love and enjoying doing. And I love that you have this rich whole experience from where you were at. So great choice in choosing UW Eau Claire. I know you're a great ambassador for them, and I know that you continue to follow the program. And with all these programs that our young athletes are in, you're going to be one of those athletes for life. So, and I know that you'll be one of those for your college as well. So thanks, Jessica, for popping in, and have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
All right, you're welcome. All right, we have a few other panelists on here tonight, and so we're just going to go around and have you guys introduce yourselves. I'd like you to talk about what high school that you're from, the sport that maybe the multiple sports, if you participated in more than one sport, and then either where you're planning on going to college in the fall or where you've been this past year. So let's start with Elliot. You want to go ahead and go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Verona Area High School. I've played soccer probably since I was 5. I played a little bit of basketball, like just kind of recreationally. Yes, I've always liked soccer. I probably when I started realizing I wanted to play college soccer was probably like 8th or 9th grade. Probably I'd say 8th grade, where I was on like this so there's there's like a pro affiliate team that they pick like the best players from Wisconsin. They put them on a team. We play in like a tournament in Las Vegas, and I was like selected for like one of the best players in the whole tournament. And then like I was looking at the other players who were like, because they did it for each age group, and like the older age group kids who also got selected, they were all playing like Division I soccer. Like one of them was going to like Creighton, and the other one was going to I think a California school or something like that. And I was like, wow, like if I keep doing like what I've been doing, like I'm on that trajectory. So I was kind of like sparked my brain. I was like, wow, like that's really a reality that could be possible. So it also kind of helped me keep working hard, focusing on soccer. So then like once for soccer, September 1st, your junior year is when you start contacting coaches. So like my club would go to like IB events, I'd contact coaches, and that kind of started there. And I picked, like I had a list of like 10 schools that I wanted. And my main thing was like, I wanted to go to an academically like good school, because like you can get hurt and not be able to play your sport, but you always can keep learning, and like that was just my main focus. And so like that list reflected that, and they were all good schools. I think at first off I didn't like, because if I didn't say it, I'm going to the University of Wisconsin, but I first off started like thinking like I don't really want to stay around home. So I was looking at schools in Colorado, California, and then like the Boston area. So I have cousins out there. And then, and also like for Wisconsin, when I started looking, they just won a Big Ten tournament. They had like 4 players drafted professionally, and they had like still to this day they have 3 or 4 players from Wisconsin on their roster of 30. So it's kind of hard. They don't really recruit very many kids from Wisconsin essentially. So that kind of put me off right away. I contacted them because the main assistant coach he played professionally in Kansas City, and then he came back once he got hurt professionally to coach at my club. And he coached me when I was like 10 and 11 at our club. So I knew him, and he was the main guy who like I talked to and recruited me. And
so
Elliot,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
Elliot, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So Elliot, do you feel like, I think you're alluding to this, is that you had a prior relationship then with a coach that then really helped you through your recruiting process because it was someone that you knew when you were younger. Is that correct?
Yeah, and like my soccer club has a long history of just sending their best players to Wisconsin. Like I think out of my from when I was 10 and 11, out of the 4 or 5 coaches that I've had, I think 3 or 4 of them have played for Wisconsin. So it's just kind of like we have a lot of connections, and then that definitely helped because the head coach was able to call my prior coaches, and he knows that they're reputable sources, and they'll give him like an honest answer. So I think that's definitely, yeah.
Oh, that's great, Elliot. We really talk about here is that, you're going to find that University of U, and obviously you were looking for a strong academic school. And then, your club coaches were very instrumental in helping you, through your recruiting process and really understanding the level. And it seemed like you really understood, what it would take to be a Badger and the level of play that, you would need to get to as well in order to be recruited by the Badgers. Do you have anything, Elliot? Was there any, when you were on your recruiting visit for the Badgers, is that when you kind of knew that you wanted to be a Badger? Was it prior to that? Do you have a specific moment where you're like, oh, I just know this is what I want?
Well, like I've always gone because like obviously the like local teams, like me and my dad would always go to games, and I enjoyed those. But then because it wasn't really on my radar, it was on my list of 10 schools just because they were so good. But I think my dad just kind of like I think he just asked me one day. He's like, "Hey, you want to go to like the Wisconsin like ID event? It was like in the winter in their like indoor training facility." I was like, "Yeah, sure," because I'm pretty yeah, it was on my list, but I wasn't. I would email them, but like I don't know, it was just kind of just in the back of my mind. I was focusing on other schools essentially, and I played really well that ID event. And the head coach asked me to bring my family in so he could talk with me. And this was the winter of my junior year. And I think once that happened, I really was like, wow, like they're interested in recruiting me and like this could possibly happen.
Oh, that's wonderful. Elliot, it'll be great to watch you as a Badger next year. And we'll head over to Leah. We have another Badger that we'll introduce next. Leah, can you talk to us, introduce yourself, tell us about your high school, and then could you just tell us a little bit about maybe that moment that you knew that you wanted to be a Badger?
Okay, I'm Leah Romaker. I ran track and cross country all throughout middle school and high school. I did play like soccer and softball as a little kid, but eventually we realized I was only good at it because I was fast. So we moved on to cross country and track. And I mean, I'm going to University of Wisconsin, yeah. And I think the moment I realized it wasn't even because of track that I like wanted to go there. I just went on like a normal like student visit to go see the campus and everything. And it was then that I was like I actually enjoyed the school. It wasn't just like I wanted to go there for track. And then, yeah, I think they sent me a letter. It was kind of annoying because we paid like $2,000 for this guy to like kind of like advertise, or not like, I don't know. He worked to like pimp me out to schools essentially. And then they didn't even like contact me through him. So they just like sent me a letter one day, and then it was kind of just official. I was like, yeah, we're going there.
That's fantastic. So you had a recruiting service that was possibly helping you through your recruiting process, but probably due to your talent, Leah, you were able to, and your talent spoke for itself, that you were able to get recruited by the Badgers. We'll go on to Jordan next. Jordan, I followed your career just because I'm a volleyball coach, and I've seen you throughout your career. And so congratulations on your college decision as well. And with all of you on your graduations here this spring, not in necessarily how you expected it. Jordan probably had a club volleyball season that was canceled this spring as you're heading into this fall. And so Jordan, your dad spoke a little bit last week about how important it was for you that your school that you chose had just strong academics. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us, where you're from, but can you really speak to what were some of the priorities that you were looking for in a school as you were, choosing that University of Yale?
Yeah, so my name is Jordan. I play volleyball. I'm going to do the University of Pennsylvania, which is like in Philadelphia. And I played volleyball in high school, obviously, and softball. Obviously, my priority was more volleyball. When I was kind of like looking at schools, obviously one of my things was like high academics, and I kind of thought like me and my dad would talk a lot about recruiting and stuff and whatever. And we would always talk about how like it would be really great if I could use volleyball to help me get into like a really high academic school that I probably wouldn't be able to get into without it. So that was kind of a thing that is important to me and was important to me. I remember my recruiting process kind of started. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to play in college or what level was really feasible for me. And I was at like a tournament. I think it was like a showcase type tournament where colleges just come watch a bunch of teams and stuff. And one of them emailed me like just out of the blue, like I'd never talked to them before. And it was like a Division I, like they weren't great, but like I was like, oh my gosh, like this school's interested in me. Like this is something that I want to do. And like this is something that's feasible for me. So then I think we reached out to a bunch of schools and like got feedback and stuff. And then eventually I went and visited UPenn and I just fell in love with the campus. It was so beautiful. And yeah, I'm gonna be a Quaker next year.
Oh, that's awesome and exciting. Jordan, was there anyone, did you have a recruiting service either that helped you through recruiting process? Was it something that you did with your parents or did your club coaches help? Was there anyone in particular that really helped you through the recruiting process or gave you great advice?
So we have like my club, one of the coaches who was the coach or my coach when I committed. He is like our recruiting coordinator and he helped me a lot through my process, but mostly we use the software Sports Recruits, but mostly I sent out the emails myself and I edited my film myself and stuff. So yeah, it was a lot of hard work, but worth it.
And so, a couple of you spoke to, Elliot, you spoke to this, and now Jordan, you're speaking to this as well, that you really reached out yourself. So you typed up emails, maybe you worked on your video. Jordan, how often do you think that you were reaching out to colleges, let's say, and then when did that start? So when did that start? And then once that starting point, how often were you reaching out to schools?
Yeah, so I think kind of the beginning of my junior year, maybe like winter-ish, is when I got that first email that kind of catalyzed the whole process for me. And then after that, I think that's when we sent out a ton of emails and we heard that like it's really important to do it yourself. Because like I think it's like a huge myth that people think, oh, like I just get contacted by them and then like, so definitely a lot of hard work went into like, I think every weekend that I was free and didn't have a tournament, I would like sit at the computer for hours and like edit film and send emails to like random colleges. So yeah.
So when you kind of cast your net, Jordan, how many schools do you think you reached out to when you cast that net at first? So when you were first sending out these emails, how many different schools do you think were a part of that?
I think it's hard to say how many, but definitely maybe like 100 or 200. Definitely like all ranges too, like Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. I wasn't really as focused on the division, more like the school and like how I would fit into the school. So
okay. And how about for you, Elliot? Elliot, you kind of talked about narrowing it down to that 10 schools. Was there ever a point, at what point did you narrow it down to that 10? And at any point was it larger than that?
I think I started with like 12 to 15, and then I cut it down to like the schools who like were interested in me once I spent like a good amount of time like emailing them. Because like I think one of the main things I kind of realized is that like you have to show that you're interested. Like one email is not enough. I think multiple emails, like phone calls, that's how you really get their attention, to show that you're interested in their school. And I think then I definitely added some too who also like saw me. So like I think the number kind of changes. And then also like I realized one of the schools I was talking to, I did like that was prior to my ACT, and it was way higher than what my ACT was. So I emailed the coach my ACT and didn't get a response back. So I was like, better do better next time. But
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, Caitlin, thank you for being so patient. Caitlin is my daughter, so I know a little bit about her recruiting process, but we look forward to kind of sharing that recruiting process with all of you. Caitlin will be a sophomore at the University of Nebraska, where she's a swimmer there. And Caitlin, you started your recruiting process really at the time when kind of some of the recruiting rules changed. Can you talk about just your recruiting journey? And I know that, it was important to you. You ended up kind of committing earlier than maybe what some swimmers did up until that point because there was some recruiting changes. But can you speak to just your, the start of your recruiting journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my recruiting process September 1st, my junior year, just as they could contact me. And one of my kind of goals was I really wanted to be done with my recruiting process before my senior year. So I really spent my junior year focusing in on emailing schools, calling schools, and taking several visits to make sure that that was where I wanted to go. And ultimately, I ended up taking multiple visits to the same school to make sure that that was really the place for me. By the spring of my junior year, I ended up committing to Nebraska. It was really one of my main goals that I wanted to be a Big Ten athlete. So that was my driving force throughout my recruiting process. making sure that I could go somewhere where I fit in well, where they wanted me and I wanted them, but also where I could swim at that level that I always dreamed of swimming at.
Great. And then, Caitlin, throughout your recruiting process, could you share like maybe some of the questions that you had of the schools that you were looking at? I know, I know there were some big questions that maybe you had of some of the schools that you were looking at. And can you share some of those questions that you asked maybe of every school?
Yeah, so I would have like a list of questions for every school that were the same, that on my first call, I would ask every college these. And then I had like a different set for the second call and a different set as the calls progressed. But number one, my thing was kind of the team culture. I wanted to make sure that I was going into a program where I fit in and that the girls were people that I wanted to become lifelong friends with and really spend my days with. So my first question was, tell me about your team culture. Another one of my questions was, I really chose a college where I would say it was kind of a reach for me. And so I wanted to make sure that I was getting better at the college that I was going to get better at. And if I was getting better, that I could be rewarded for that progress. So that was definitely a big factor for me to make sure that they were acknowledging that and acknowledging that I really have a want to be better and get better and swim at a very high level. So that was one of my questions. And then, of course, I asked about the academics and kind of what went into that as being an athlete, like what are the benefits here, tutors, different meal plans, different just like scheduling and just all the crazy benefits that you can get as a student athlete. I was really focused in on kind of what they could help me with. Because being a student athlete is just so time consuming. How can they help me with my academics to be the best I can be? So that was also one of my big questions.
So one additional question I have for you, Caitlin, is, and I would have had this for Jessica as well, but could you just explain to us maybe what a typical day looks like, a day in the life of a student athlete? Maybe explain a day where you are on a practice day. And then maybe secondly, could you explain like what a game day is or a day that you might have a meet, like what that looks like exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a swimmer, our days are pretty taxing, quite honestly. Every day we have morning practice. So like a typical Monday would be I'm up at 5:20 for practice at 6 o'clock. We swim for about an hour and a half and then we'll lift right after. And then we'll all go to breakfast as a team at our student athlete dining hall. So we'll all be there together with all the different athletes. And we'll get to share kind of our mornings and such. And then we'll head to class. I'll have class from about 9 to about 1 o'clock, probably. Sneak some lunch in there at the same dining hall. And then we're back at practice around 2:30. And then we'll swim again for about hour 45. And then we all head to dinner together. And then after dinner, we all hang out kind of in our student life complex and we're doing homework, we're studying for tests, we're socializing, we're getting our study hours in. And then we go to sleep and do it all over again. And then kind of a day in the life of like competition. It's definitely lots of fun. If we're traveling, it's a little bit different, just depending on if we have to fly or drive down the night before. We'll be in a hotel. They'll be providing us meals, and usually our meets aren't till like noon. So if we have a home meet, in the morning, we'll be getting up together, having a little wake up swim. We'll be having a team meeting. Everyone will be dressed up in their gear. We'll have a little snack and do our like pre-meet rituals. And then we'll compete and we'll get to kind of see our parents after if they came and watched. And yeah, that's about it.
That's awesome. Sounds like you had some long days there, Caitlin.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Did you feel, what was there any surprise for you that as I kind of shifted some other questions, were you surprised by anything when you stepped on campus at Nebraska? Like something that you were like, oh, I had no idea this was going to be like this.
Yeah, for sure. I always thought that I was like very prepared to swim in college and very prepared for that level and I was ready. But I didn't realize that like you don't really know what you're getting into until you're there. Just the level of expectation in practice every day is kind of a different thing than you'll ever experience. Just the level you're expected to perform and kind of hold yourself just throughout the day, because you are a student athlete and people look up to you. And so you have to be making decisions and doing well in school and in life just to portray that college that you are a part of. But yeah, I would say practice for me was definitely a big adjustment. The first couple months I had to learn kind of what they were expecting of me and their new like training regimen and stuff like that. But after the 2 months, I really got into a good rhythm and I felt like it was really the place for me and I was able to improve lots. So
That's fantastic. Thank you for just sharing kind of your journey or one step ahead of kind of some of the other people we have on the panel today. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure Leah, Jordan, and Elliot really appreciate hearing from another student athlete to kind of know what is coming up this fall. Leah, can you talk a little bit about your, your timeline in choosing Wisconsin, like what your timeline looked like, maybe start even your freshman year, like when you really started to know, okay, this is what I really would like to do. And then did you have any role models, like anyone that you looked up to that you were like, oh boy, someday I want to be like her?
Well, freshman year, I don't even think I had like any idea of like running in college. I don't think I actually decided I wanted to until the end of my sophomore year, because it was just I had a lot of improvement from my freshman to sophomore year. So that was just very surprising. And then like, that's when we kind of started the whole recruiting process. And I don't think Wisconsin didn't reach out until it was like my junior year, I think, or might have been the winter of my sophomore year, whatever. But they sent the letter and then I got a text and a call from the coach after that. And then that was just kind of when I decided I was gonna go there. And I know it sounds bad. I didn't really have any like role models, I guess.
That's all right. Did you make an official visit to the Badgers, and then did you make any official visits? And you don't have to name the schools, but did you take multiple official visits, or did you just kind of know you wanted to be a Badger and that was your only official visit?
I took like just normal student visits to like other schools, just because I was like more concerned with like how I would enjoy the school even if I wasn't an athlete. So like I visited like Minnesota, Illinois State, and just like took regular visits, and I don't know, they just weren't really clicking. So, and then I took my normal visit to Madison and we were vibing with it. And then I had my official visit like this past winter. I went and hung out with the team for a while. So yeah.
That's fantastic. And Leah, that's something that we encourage all of our student athletes to do, even our younger, student athletes that are even thinking about it in, when they're middle schoolers, is, go visit those schools. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a visit. And even right now with COVID, it can be a virtual visit that you're taking to some of these schools to maybe talk to an admissions rep, just get the feel of what the school might look like. And you guys have all made this point, which is so great, is that if I weren't an athlete, would I still want to be at this particular school? Jordan, can you talk about, did you take multiple official visits? And what an official visit means is that the school can pay for that. Like, tell me what your unofficial and official visits, maybe look like. And then if you did take an official visit, what does an official visit mean? Like, what did those days look like?
So I actually never took my official visit at Penn because we were trying to plan it with the rest of my class, like all the commits. And then my coach actually resigned recently. So like before COVID and stuff. And then we got a new coach, but like we couldn't go out there because like obviously everything's kind of shut down. But I did take a lot of unofficial visits to like a bunch of different schools. It was really good because my club schedule, we traveled a ton, and like I was talking to a bunch of schools in the areas that we traveled in. And I just wanted to say that like if you visit a school, it really shows that you're interested in them. So like even if the coach like doesn't ask you to come and like you go, you can like always be like, hey, like I'm coming to tour the school today, like whatever. And then they'll see that like you're really interested. So that's I think that's a piece of advice someone told me one time, because like obviously if you're going, you're really interested in them. But yeah, an unofficial, basically I would do like this school tour that like prospective like students would take, and I would do that, and then usually I would go talk to the coach or the team separately. So yeah.
Okay. That you bring up just a great point there too, of just, taking these visits, and we encourage you to, and communicate that you're going to be on those visits. And also, camps are a great way to do that. I know some of the camps are, definitely at the Division I level are canceled for this particular summer, but letting them know that, hey, I'm going to be on your campus for this particular camp that you have, shows that you're really interested in that college or university, and that goes a long way with a coach. Elliot, were you able to take an official visit with the Badgers, or did you take official visits at any other schools, or tell us about your official visits and how that went?
I took one official visit at Wisconsin. It was fantastic, loved it. And that was after I committed, actually, because they kind of wanted to shore up their recruiting class prior to when I was able to do it, and also like their scheduling. So I committed first, and then I took a visit. Then all my other schools I was talking to, it was either like talking to them at a camp, or then just like day visits.
That's fantastic. Can you guys talk a little bit about, we had some of your parents were on here last weekend, and we had a nice visit with them. Can you talk about, Jordan spoke to the fact that they really want to hear from you as the athlete, and not hear from your parents or your parents' voice in the emails or even some of the phone conversations that you're having. Can you talk about, maybe some of the ways that your parents were helpful through the recruiting visit? And maybe Caitlin, we'll start with you. So see what you have, see how your parents helped you through your recruiting visit first.
I would definitely say going to the recruiting process, I felt like my parents had a lot more knowledge than the average parent because they were both college athletes. So I'd say that was just super helpful because I was able to ask them questions versus having to find an outside source to really rely on and be like, hey, how do you do this? Like, how should I go about these certain situations? So I was fortunate to have their experiences helped me a lot. And then also just like building connections too, like when I was on my visits, it was nice to have my parents along because they would pick up on things that maybe I wouldn't pick up on. And so then we could kind of discuss what we saw and what we thought were pros and what we thought were cons, and they could help build a relationship with coach as well as me building a relationship with the coach and the teammates. So I would say it was definitely nice, and my parents were very helpful.
Were you nervous through this process? Like, how did you handle this? Was it stressful for you? I mean, how did you handle, I guess, the stress of the process, and then knowing that maybe they didn't, they really wanted to hear from you and not maybe hear from your mom and dad. And normally your mom and dad can maybe kind of be the front people for some of these conversations, right? They'll carry some of these conversations, but really they want to hear from you. Was that stressful for you?
Yeah, for sure. My calls were very nerve-wracking for me. I would be like freaking out like minutes before my calls, like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Like low-key, like I hope they don't pick up. But of course I wanted them to pick up because you want to talk to them. But it's hard too sometimes because you don't know the personality style of the coach you're talking to. So you have to kind of be flexible around like them asking you questions, you asking them questions, and like getting to know them. So it was definitely a big learning curve for me to navigate those because I'm more of an introverted personality. So it definitely brought out my some uncomfortable situations for me, but it definitely made me grow, and I'm thankful that it did.
Jordan, you're nodding. Did you have some of the same feelings as Caitlin?
Yeah, no, I definitely would like freak out. Like honestly, the whole day before my call, I would just be like thinking about it, and I would get so nervous. And like it always went fine, but it was just like something that was so scary for me. And like not even scary, I was just like nervous that I would say something wrong, or like they would not like me as a person, or I don't know. And definitely my dad too was like a huge part in like pushing me to like set up calls and like text the coaches like and get out my videos and stuff. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Leah, how did you feel through that process of communication, maybe some of those phone calls, and how did your mom and dad help you with that?
They were very helpful actually, because when I would be on calls or like even at my visit, I just would immediately forget any questions that I had. So they would like have all the questions that I actually needed to ask, and they would like give them to me. They'd text them to me. They'd be like, "You need to ask this," because I would always forget something. So
And were you nervous? How did you, I guess, handle the situation? Were you stressful throughout this situation, or was it pretty easy for you? What was the emotional, because a lot of the parents talked about last weekend that it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster for their student athlete. And so can you speak to that?
yeah, it wasn't like it wasn't super stressful. It was just kind of like confusing because I wasn't sure all the time, and I was always like questioning and like second guessing myself. I'm like, oh wait, do I really want to do this? Like, do I really want to go here? Like, is this really the right choice? But it's like I worked so hard, so like I can't just give up now. And so, I mean, yeah, I'd say less stressful, more just like confusing.
Okay. And how about for you, Elliot? How did your parents help you through the process, and then give us an idea of what that emotional piece was like for you?
I'd say like they were just kind of like my support staff. Like my mom would help me like make that list that I talked about, and obviously like just pay for me to go around the country doing what I love. And it was definitely an emotional roller coaster though. Like I remember one time, one of the schools I was talking to, I broke a toe in a tournament like a month before I was supposed to go to like 3 camps like across the country. And I went to the doctor and they basically told me I shouldn't even play. And then I was like, this was my summer junior year, which is huge for soccer because everything's kind of delayed for soccer because I know like everybody can grow differently. But by then, like that's when they're making their decisions essentially. And so I broke my toe and I went down, it was in Illinois. I went to play this school and I didn't play very well. Just had a broken toe and it just killed. I was like popping Tylenol before a game. Like basically every single training, I was popping Tylenol. Like it sucked. And I didn't play very well. And then after, basically, I sent them emails saying, yeah, thanks for like having me for this camp. And I was talking to them prior, and then they just cut off all contact. And I was like, yeah, I was really down in the dumps after that one, and it kind of hurt. But I guess it all works out.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jordan, we're in 2020 right now. If you could go back to 2016, what would you tell your freshman self?
I would definitely say, like, if you think that you want to play in college, like, maybe, like, start talking to schools, because I know, like, when I started talking to schools, a bunch of people, or, like, the schools that I wanted to go to had already, like, committed setters for my class. So it's just really good to, like, even just put your name out there and, like, get them in your head. And then maybe if they want you, then they'll, like, keep you in the back of their mind, even if they're looking at other people.
So just some earlier action is what you'd suggest. So even if you think this might be a possibility, start to get those feelers out.
Because I was definitely unsure when I was a freshman, and I think I was kind of like, whatever, like, I don't really know. Like, no one was reaching out to me, so I was like, I don't even know if I can, but definitely getting your name out there is really helpful.
How about you, Caitlin? If you went back to your 2016 self, what would you have to say? And, I think you're in a sport too, where, a lot of these sports that we're talking to, as Elliot pointed out, that there's this upward trajectory, like kids change and kids improve so much. And Caitlin, maybe you're in a sport sometimes that has a little bit more ups and downs as far as, the times that you're putting on the board, maybe as a younger swimmer, can fluctuate as you're getting older. So I guess, what would you tell your 2016 self?
Yeah, honestly, I would tell my 2016 self to play multiple sports because that cross training too is motivating when you get stuck in a rut, maybe in swimming for a couple years or a couple months where you're not really improving your times. I did track in high school, and so it was very motivating that I could go to that sport and felt immediate improvement in there. It kind of kept me looking hopeful towards the future for the sport that I really loved, of swimming. So yeah, I would just say definitely I would suggest playing multiple sports if you can, especially because going into college, you're really committing into one sport. But colleges look at that as kind of a benefit, and seeing that, oh, hey, like, she isn't spending all of her time on swimming, like she can have this potential if we put her in the pool year round. Maybe she'll just start dropping time. And fortunately, that has happened for me and has happened for many others. So I would definitely say that's my advice.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I think there's this like perception or misnomer out there that, college, coaches are only looking for athletes that participate in their one sport, and they just want to see this complete dedication, only to this one sport, or, if you're not swimming or participating at certain times a year, that you're not committed to that sport. But like you spoke of, Caitlin, is that, you can have some, added positive benefits for you as an athlete just participating in multi sports throughout your high school career. And then how do you think that helped you, competing in multiple sports, just being in high school, just even as a student? How did that help you?
Yeah, I think it definitely helped me make a lot more friends and like deeper my connections there. I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway. But also just like, it's funny looking back, because like I just had a meeting with my head coach last week, and he still brings up that I was a multi-sport athlete and how like he sees benefits in that, in my lifting and in my athleticism, and kind of in my future potential. And so I think that was like a motivating factor for me when someone could look at me and be like, hey, like maybe she isn't at the level right now that we want, but we see that she has huge potential and she's going to get there. And so we're going to bet on her. And the colleges that did that, I really knew that they truly wanted me. And so that was kind of like a big helping factor too in my college decision.
Yeah, it's almost like they did their homework too, right? They did their homework to figure out, okay, how's this athlete spending your time? Leah, how about for you, if we look back to 2016, any advice that you'd give your younger self?
I would tell 2016 me to hit the weight room, because I was not doing that freshman year. And it's probably why I got so much faster sophomore year. So yeah, because I wasn't really thinking about college at that time. So I guess just, yeah, hit the weight room, have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Elliot?
I mean, it sounds cliche, but just like believe in yourself. Like sometimes don't think you can do it, but like if you work hard and like you stay focused, that it'll work out.
Yeah, absolutely. I just thank all of you for being on this call tonight. Before we close, I'm just going to talk just a few changes about what's going on with COVID. And we really appreciate, though, our student athletes being on tonight. And they're going to stay on for a little bit longer. So if you have a few questions for any of them individually, we have a soccer player on here. We have a track and field. We have a volleyball player. We have a swimmer. So we have multi-sport athletes on here tonight. So if you have any specific questions of them, feel free to have them come across Facebook or however you're watching us this evening. But I'm just going to speak a little bit to some of the recruiting changes that are going on with COVID. Recently, the NCAA decided to extend the dead period for Division I. So that will be going through July 31st. And so what that means is that no member NCAA schools coaches can be in person at any live events in June or July. So they cannot be out on the recruiting trail live, although they can be watching videotapes. So if you're on a softball team or you're on a baseball team that happens to be participating right now, they can watch possibly some of those on a particular tape. If you're a high school athlete or player, just don't be fooled into thinking that there will be college coaches at these events. And then know that these changes are different for each division. So Division II and Division III are actually in a quiet period. They can bring recruits on campus right now, but they can't go off campus to recruit. So NCAA, Division I cannot bring their student athletes on campus, nor can they go off campus to recruit. So actually some advantages right now, if you're looking at a Division II or Division III school, or even thinking about that this summer, there's a highly likely, a likelihood that they may even have some of their camps actually going on right now. And, you just have to feel out for your family what you're comfortable with that, but be in contact with those Division I and Division II, or Division II and Division III schools. It might be a great time to check those out because they may have some of their programming going on this summer, especially if you're heading into your sophomore or heading into your junior year and that big recruiting push. It might be a great time for you to get out there, much to what Jordan talked about is, getting on those campuses, emailing them, and just communicating in ways that you are able. For you rising juniors, June 15th is also coming up. That's when the coaches can start making recruiting calls to you. So, we have some resources with on-campus college planning that can help you make a phone call, that can help you with those emails. So feel free to reach out to us too. We'd be happy to help you navigate this process. As Caitlin spoke to a little bit earlier, she had a book that she used, and she had some questions that we helped her through. I've been on every side of this recruiting process. I was a college volleyball coach. I played volleyball in college, and then also now as a parent with Caitlin, and then her brother Joshua also rose for the University of Wisconsin. So kind of seen every side of this recruiting process. So please reach out to us. And, like Jordan said, if you have any idea that you may are even thinking about being a college athlete, reach out to those colleges. And to Leah's point, you may want to start some early lifting as well. And that can help you to make some, big improvements in your athleticism along the way. And, especially with what we have going on, you can really improve yourself at home as well. Those are things that you can start to do maybe in some of your home workouts as even things start to open up a little bit more in Wisconsin. Any of our student athletes have anything else that they'd like to share? So Elliot or Jordan or Caitlin or Leah, do you have any stories or something that we missed maybe sharing tonight that was just a great tidbit that we should pass along?
A really good piece of advice that someone gave me was like on phone calls or visits, like they're selling themselves to you as much as you're selling yourself to them. So like, I know I would always get like super nervous and worked up for calls and visits and stuff, but like understand that like it's both ways and like you want to be there too. Like it's not just them wanting you. So
yeah, you really have to really meet somewhere right along that path. Caitlin, I remember sitting in a recruiting visit with you where they just wanted to be super sure that you loved swimming and that super sure that you really wanted to go there, like almost to the point where I was like, are they trying to discourage us? Maybe you can share that conversation.
Yeah, you were talking about my Nebraska visit, right?
Yeah.
Actually, where I ended up, they were very concerned with everybody on the team being very passionate about the sport, and just making sure that this was the right fit, as Jordan was saying, that they wanted me, but I needed to want them just as much, just to make sure that that fit was there, because if that fit is not there, it's not a good thing for the college or for you. So just making sure that that's really where you want to be and really where you see yourself in the future, and really the people you see yourself spending your 4 years with.
Yeah, and I think probably especially with swimming, that was a question that maybe gets asked even more because there can, possibly be some, Caitlin spoke, you're getting up at 5 a.m. and you have long days that you're putting in. And so I think retention in that sport is, certainly can be an issue maybe at some of the schools that you're going to, and something that you're going to really want to talk about and understand, how many of your athletes are sticking with the sport, are continuing to participate in that sport. And one thing with COVID that I would really talk to our student athletes about right now as well is just the, economic, be looking at the college as a whole. How are they doing economically as a whole? Are they continuing to carry all the sports that, that they said that they were going to have? Are they cutting, their athletic programs in any way? And, as you're a rising junior going into your senior year with what's going on with COVID, just being aware of maybe some of those outside external forces that may be going on at some of your universities that you don't have any control over. So just be watching as well as, the school that maybe that you're interested in, if you're a rising junior, sophomore, or even heading into your senior year. Are they going online this fall? Are they doing a combination of that? Are they having in-person classes? There just can be some advantages to different universities right now, and they may not all look the same as we're heading, especially into this next year. Anyone else have anything to share? Well, I just thank all of you for being on this evening. You guys were all just insightful, and I wish you all the best of luck at the colleges and universities you guys are heading onto. And I thank Caitlin and Jessica for being on tonight as well, and just sharing a little bit about their college journey. And best of luck to you, Elliot and Jordan and Leah, as you guys are all heading off to your colleges and universities. We look forward to following you. And if you have any follow-up questions, please let us know. We'll be following along on Facebook Live here the rest of the evening. Feel free to reach out to myself at On Campus College Planning, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks so much.
Bye.